thank you, Mr. Leckler, and it's always a privilege and a pleasure to be able to come out and talk to people who have similar thoughts than I do. I'll just give you a little bit of background of where I am and where I came from. I'm a Kansan. I was born right outside Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. My dad was in World War II, and all his brothers, all 6 of his brothers, and my mom, all 8 of her brothers were in the armed forces. My father-in-law was a Marine. He was one of the first combat African-American Marines that fought in World War II in Guinea. So we have a tremendous history of supporting and loving and appreciating our presence in America. Kansas is a little different than most states. Our legacy comes from soldiers fighting in the Texas, which became the Kansas regiments, right during the Civil War. And when the war ended in Texas, they decided to exercise their Second Amendment rights and go and take their 40 acres and a mule. And they were put in Kansas to fight the Native Americans, so they became Buffalo Soldiers. But what that did to us, it taught us to always be fiercely independent, If you got something done, you had to do it yourself. It was your individual responsibility to take care of yourself and your family. Government was an instrument, but government was not to be trusted. The only part of the Constitution that we liked was the original Constitution. We saw no need for the 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment. We felt that we were empowered in ourselves to take care of ourselves by using and fiercely undermining ourselves and our community with the use of the Second Amendment. My dad went on and stayed with the Command General Staff School at Fort Leavenworth for a number of years, so I got a lot of chances to talk to a lot of people and understand a lot of things. And Kansas, a lot of people don't really understand, and I get in conversations with the speaker and with Delegate Lingenfelter with regard to the Civil War, because it's really a conflict. Because a Kansan, I love John Brown, I love what he did and how he taught and what he thought about and how we should empower ourselves. But I also understand the things that went on in Virginia as well. But one of the things that when I moved here from Cleveland, I worked for a money center bank in Cleveland. I was the first African American that was hired there. And I was hired on merit. I didn't believe, I've never taken advantage of any affirmative action. I didn't even know what it was, to tell you honest God truth, because we never focused on that. We never focused on problems. My sisters went to Harvard and MIT. They're both doctors. The other sister went to the University of Kansas. I majored in economics, and I went to Case Western University and studied economics, master's levels there as well. And we never, in fact, when I was in high school, we didn't want our classes integrated. We integrated our schools. I'm 61 years old. We integrated our schools when I was in junior high, and that had to be 1965-ish. And actually, we didn't want that to happen. All we wanted was to have the ability to have the same structures, educators, paid teachers, and books and instructional materials that everybody had. We just wanted fair opportunity, nothing more and nothing less. And we fought for that. But Kansas being fiercely independent, our story has never been told. The first protest regarding lunch counters and things like that was not in North Carolina. It was in Wichita, Kansas in 1963. We fought fiercely to have our own schools and to maintain our own educational basis. And that's why you had the Board versus Speaker Board of Education with regard to the educational issues that came up. And then that was distorted. Because in our argument against that system, we did not want to be integrated. We just wanted to fiercely compete in a competitive system. And that got exploited, as well as the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, as far as I'm concerned. So to bring it back up to present day, when I came to Virginia, I was really confused by the stature of my fellow African Americans. I just did not understand people that waited for government to do things. I just didn't understand it. When I moved into Norfolk at the time, I could speak pretty good, I could think pretty good, and I could get things done on my own, and I had a pretty good background and inventory of people that I could talk to. And I'll never forget, his name was Tom Moss, who was a very high Democrat at the time, and Stanley Walker. I went to a breakfast, and they pulled me over and said, "Sir, you talk pretty good, you look pretty good, you've got good educational background, but you've got to get in line before you can run for a public office," which I had no interest in doing whatsoever. I said, I'm not going to run as a Democrat. I don't believe anything you guys say. And I just said, I don't believe it. I don't believe any of this stuff. I don't understand why we're sitting here begging government to do what we can do for ourselves.
And do it better.
And do it better, and do it wiser, because in our household, we had success. Our expectations were high, they were clear, they were defined. Good and evil was totally permeated in our brains. We were brought up to understand that we had to do service to our country. We never saw race as an issue, a hurdle, yes, but we were always taught to work twice as hard. Don't worry about that. Don't take advantage of that. Don't do that. And a lot of times when I got to Virginia, they said, well, Bill, you could start this minority company and get these set-asides and do this and do that and become rich. I said, I can't do that. My best friend, when I went to school and worked in the bank in Cleveland, was Michael Gonziorowski, a guy from Czechoslovakia. His family had imported. And the only thing that we thought about is that when we had children, my children were going to go to West Point, University of Virginia, and some other schools, and his kids were going to go too. But we were going to go on a competitive basis. Never thought I was not going to take anything from anybody, because we always saw that as a hindrance to our freedom. And in Virginia, I saw that, and to tell you the honest God truth, I was really disappointed in the Republican Party at the time, because what I saw them doing until I met a man named Vance Wilkins, they were telling me that they could bring in members from the NAACP and the SCLC, the Southern Leadership Conference, and I said, you can't bring those people here. Black or white is irrelevant. What their principles are completely different than what our principles are. I don't understand somebody, and quite frankly, Martin Luther King's family were Republicans. Daddy King was a Republican. My parents grew up in Mississippi and Alabama as Republicans, and I was from the Lincoln legacy. A lot of the soldiers at the time tended to go with the Democratic Party because Harry Truman made my dad and my mama's brothers officers in the Army. And they would never, ever forget that. But their way they thought about things and the way they lived their lives were totally conservative, totally conservative. And that's how we were brought up. And then when I came here, I saw, well, you need to go over to the NAACP and get this person to do that. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Martin Luther King really never had an affiliation with the NAACP. He really didn't. He was fiercely independent as well. So we always had, I had a conflict between somebody telling me I had to do something or do things and do anything. And even I came out to, when I see Republican outreach, which we'll talk about as well, I used to see that as you're bringing people in and preachers talking about ex-offenders and drug dealers and drug programs. I don't know these people. Where are these people coming from? My children were taught to be honest. They understood the consequences of every decision they made every day made them a whole being, and that they had to be able to be competitive in a global environment. And if you broke the law, if you did bad things would happen to you. And then you would have to go get at the end of the line. I never saw the Republican Party talk about the individuals that I knew, the doctors, the lawyers, the individualists, the entrepreneurs, the capitalists, that were actually competing quite well in Virginia and in American society. I saw people grumbling and grappling for things that I thought were totally unrealistic. We made good friendships. I fought hard, and it was the only one at certain times with others. There was Winsome Sears, who ran an election that I ran for her. And I had to argue with the Republican Party because we wanted to run on welfare reform, abortion rights, and prayer in school and charter schools. They told us you can't run like that. I said, oh, yes, we can. Yes, we can. If we go to every church and ask the pastor, the biggest impediment in the African American community today is abortions. It's abortions. Our race is almost at a negative birth rate because abortions are in competition with live births. And I wanted a pastor in a black church, or any church, come to think about it, to tell me, how in the world could you justify taking a life? When all my life and all my existence was taught that life was precious. It was sacred. And you don't mess with it. And even if we were going to be, quote, African American and have a state, a foothold in this great society that we live in, should we have more of us versus less? So we took that campaign to the community. We took the campaign on charter schools. I'm here with Hampton University at the time with Dr. Harvey. I just mentioned him a little bit ago, but we also wanted to start a charter school in the city of Hampton. And we put in $1 million, we built the building, we went in and got the laws changed, we did everything possible to get it started. And that was in 1999, 2000. Once we got the law changed, the Democrats went in, they were kind of in control of the General Assembly, I believe, at the time, but we had a measurable amount of Republicans. They shut us down. Not one Republican came to our defense. Not one. Not one said, oh, this is the right thing to do. This was 15 years ago. We're talking about science, technology, engineering, and math. Because what we saw as true leaders of America, not of Africa America, but America, that our children, both black and white, would have to be proficient in those particular counties. Otherwise, they didn't. I also knew that everybody that I knew, from Doug Wilder to myself, to Dr. Harvey, to Gerald Jones, to Ken Melvin, to everybody that I knew, all my friends sent their kids to private school. They didn't send their kids to public schools. These are African Americans. We didn't do that. We sent our kids so they could get the best opportunity that they could possibly get. And unfortunately, when we argue, and people get upset with me sometimes about arguing about public schools, I'm really not arguing about public schools. Public schools can be the very, very best. And you can tell where you have a good public school. You'll see right now a little baseball sign-up list, because that's a commitment, and parents have to make commitments to that. So I live in neighborhoods that have those kind of signs out there. But in the Virginia inner cities, I would never put my child in a Norfolk or Richmond or Petersburg public schools. And it's not because of the brick and mortar. It's not because of the teachers that are there. It's not because of the books. It's the values. It's the values that we were taught are totally a thesis to what they're doing now. And then when we stood up and talked about that and said, no, we're not going to do it, and we're going to do it, we're going to do it this way, again, I was disappointed in the Republican Party because they set back. We argued a lot with Mark Early when he was running for his governorship, and we told him and advised him, why are you doing this? Why are you going out and reaching out to, and I'm not saying this group or that group, but to liberals? These people will never believe what you're saying, black or white. They're not going to do that. Well, we're going to change. They're going to change. No, you are going to change. You're going to change and lower and devalue your beliefs into what they believe. That's the only way it's going to go. That's one direction.